one-time AEW Women's World Champion, Pro Wrestling Illustrated's Woman of the Year in 2021, Pro Wrestling Illustrated's Match of the Year in 2021 versus Thunder Rosa, Pro Wrestling Illustrated Most Improved Wrestler of the Year in 2021, ranked number 4 of the top 150 female wrestlers in the PWI Women's 150 in 2021. I've been waiting months to say this, guys. Ladies, gentlemen, my non-binary friends, it is I, Josh Robinson, here for Love Wrestling, and today, the Doctor will see you, because it's time for the legacy of Dr. Britt Baker, D.M.D. I have been waiting the longest time to do a Legacy of intro again. It has been so many, it feels like years. It's only been a couple of months, but it feels like years since I was able to sit down and talk some Legacy of with you guys. I've been scrambling my brain these last couple of months to bring the Legacy of back and to make it bigger and better than ever. Season 2 is here. This is where it all starts, and there's no one better to start with the Doctor herself. It is Britt Baker, D.M.D. For you guys, Britt Baker is setting the wrestling world on fire at the moment. There's no one better than Britt Baker. So when I was scratching my head and going, ugh, season 2, I always knew I was going to bring back the Legacy of. There was never a doubt in my mind that it was coming back here to Love Wrestling. But when I was scratching my head and going, ooh, who should I, have my subject on? Who should be the person that I'm talking about here on the Legacy of? And there was just no one else I wanted to do it on rather than Britt Baker. Come on, guys. She is a pillar of All Elite Wrestling. But before we get to Britt Baker and before we get to all that good stuff, make sure to like this video, subscribe, that big red subscribe button, make sure you hit it. Join us here on Love Wrestling. Make sure you hit the bell as well so you're getting notifications on when Love Wrestling is dropping brand new videos. It is a very different Love Wrestling to the last time you heard my voice with You Have It, and even very different to the last time you heard an episode of The Legacy of. We're growing, we're expanding, we're doing cool stuff. All of the links to my stuff and Love Wrestling stuff is in the description box below. So make sure to join the fun and love Wrestling with us. And just love wrestling in general. Come on, who doesn't love professional wrestling? It's hard to think when Britt Baker began her wrestling career, and with all this success that she's had, it's hard to kind of scratch your head and go, wait a minute, Britt Baker has only been wrestling since 2014, since she began her training. She made her indie debut in 2015. We've seen her on WWE Raw as a quote-unquote jobber, losing to Nia Jax in a jobber match, in a squash match. She kind of continued with the independent wrestling scene, and we knew who Britt Baker was, but I don't think we realized what we were really in store for when she signed with All Elite Wrestling as the very first female contracted in 2019 at the very beginning of All Elite Wrestling. So here's the thing with this episode of The Legacy of. Josh, how do you really do a Legacy of when someone's only been wrestling for a couple of years on a major stage? I know, I was thinking that too, but what Britt Baker has done in these last couple of years in AEW has been huge for AEW, has been huge for women in wrestling, and has been huge for Britt Baker. We all remember when Britt came in 2019 at Double or Nothing. We've seen her at All In, of course, before AEW was really a thing. She was in the Fatal 4-Way. She did not win that match. We all kind of knew that she was destined for bigger things, but we really didn't know exactly what they were. When she came in at Double or Nothing in 2019 at the very first AEW show, she was kind of obviously a big deal because she was the first female signed to AEW, so we kind of had this preconceived notion and this pressure on her to be great. And I think, like any of us, that much pressure, we would kind of sink. At least I would. I would sink under that pressure. I won't talk for anybody else, but I think I would sink under that pressure because it's so much being the first woman signed to AEW and this brand new company that has a lot of buzz, that has a lot of really great wrestlers in it. You're going to feel a lot of that pressure. Now, of course, Britt, we know now, has kind of risen above that pressure and exceeded all of our expectations, but there was a little bit of a stalling period where she was just kind of there. She was a babyface, she was doing this great stuff. Of course, she was a dentist, and it was kind of really really hammered in that she is a real dentist, guys. She has a dentistry office in Florida, and when you're not seeing Dr. Britt Baker, D.M.D, on AEW television. She's a legitimate doctor, Britt Baker, as a dentist in Florida. So she is a real dentist, and I think that kind of became a parody of itself. And being a babyface in that role, you're gonna kind of get killed. It's gonna be a thing that's gonna hinder you more than help you. However, when we can really start diving into Britt Baker is when that heel turn happened, when she was on an episode of Dynamite on the Jericho cruise, I believe, kind of berating Tony Schiavone, who would later become like her best friend, but I digress. And that's when we really got to see a different side of Britt Baker. Britt Baker had been just a very, I would just say a very generic babyface, and she had so much pressure that you have to be more than just the bare minimum of being a good wrestler and just a very, I guess, overplayed character in the sense of just, I'm happy, I'm smiling, 2 thumbs up from me. So I think it's really here when we can really start digging into what Britt Baker is doing for AEW. Not long after her heel turn, Britt Baker did suffer an injury. Now this is what really is really cool about AEW, and is what really, I think a lot of people gravitate towards AEW because of this kind of stuff, is Britt got hurt, and a lot of injuries would just, for the most part, take you off of television, and you'd just come back and pick up kind of where you left off, or whatever it may be. With AEW, they realized that at that point, there wasn't a lot of women in their division, and they kind of needed, I think a lot of people with the AEW women's division, they want depth, they want character work, they don't just want wrestling, they want more than that, they want kind of beyond the AEW Women's World Championship and now the TBS Championship. They want some stories, they want some other things, and I think the really cool thing about Britt is because she was limited, she couldn't wrestle in the ring at the time because of her injury, she was able to really develop a great character, playing on the dentist stuff, and less of like, I'm a dentist, guys, like, I'm really cool, and being like, I'm a dentist, guys, I'm really cool. You know what I mean? Like, really playing on that, becoming the role model, and literally in a wheelchair, the role model, and doing stuff like, she had a talk show, and like the waiting room I'm talking about, guys, and she's doing other things and building a character, building great mic work. Britt Baker has become a great speaker. If you hear some of Britt's work on Dynamite and Rampage and Dark and whatever else that she's on, when she gets the chance to speak in a backstage segment or with a live microphone in the ring, Britt Baker 9 times out of 10 is exceeding any expectations that we even have for her now. She's really, really damn good. And for a division that is still, I think, a little behind with some things, and they've improved greatly. They're doing some really great things in AEW with their women, but character work is something that it's taken them a little bit longer to get their hands around and to really dig into the meat and potatoes of what they can do in a character work. Britt Baker brings everybody up to her level, and that's something that a great performer does. Outside of the ring, in the ring, but Britt is a really, really standout character in AEW, and I think that's what really, at the moment, is what I love about Britt Baker so much, is I'm a person in wrestling that loves wrestling, but I really thrive on great characters, and I would rather a average wrestler with a really great character than a great wrestler with a really average character. That's how I am in wrestling, and I'm not saying Britt Baker is an average wrestler, because she definitely is not. She's great in the ring. She's had some great matches, which we're going to dive into in just a second, but when Britt was working with Big Swole and really developing her character, that's when I fell in love with Dr. Britt Baker, D.M.D. I think that's when a lot of people fell in love with Dr. Britt Baker, D.M.D. Getting Rebel or Reba by her side was just this great contrast of someone being so serious in Britt Baker and someone being so silly in Reba or Rebel, whatever you want to call her, whatever kind of side you want to lean onto there. And of course, the relationship between Tony Schiavone and Britt Baker just added to Britt Baker's persona. Britt Baker is so damn good at captivating an audience with her words and with her timing of knowing where a camera is. She said this in many interviews that I've watched of Britt Baker is, I learnt camera work, I learnt where to look, Britt Baker is really good at finding the camera and knowing exactly what shot needs to be portrayed to the world. She's really, really good at that. And it's just those little things that are adding together with Britt Baker to make her a performer instead of just a good worker. But of course, it would be pretty silly of me to not mention the breakout moment of Britt Baker. Yes, all of these things were happening with Britt when she was injured and doing all this great character work, but I think the moment that we realized Britt went from a star to a megastar in AEW was, of course, the unsanctioned Lights Out match at St. Patrick's Day Slam versus Thunder Rosa. Now, we've seen many hardcore matches, we've seen Lights Out matches in AEW, we've seen street fights. Predominantly, in mainstream wrestling, it has always been with men. We have seen women in different stipulations, and especially on the opposite side of things, in the WWE world, women were main eventing WrestleMania and they were excelling and having all these great performances. That added an even bigger layer of pressure onto Britt and all of the AEW women's division, because no matter what people say of how different the products are between WWE and AEW, they're very different products. There's always going to be a comparison because of what, at the end of the day, what they're doing, and that is professional wrestling. They're wrestling inside a wrestling ring, so there's always going to be comparisons. So I think a lot of the pressure that we put on the AEW women's division is because the WWE women's evolution, or whatever you want to call it, has been so wonderful. So switching gears now to that Lights Out match, Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker, we were expecting, okay, we're going to get some cool little street fight things happening, some kendo sticks, some chairs, maybe some tables. We weren't expecting them to literally go all out here, no pun intended. We weren't expecting blood. We've never really seen women bleed on a mainstream scale ever in wrestling. There's never been a thing. And we're bridging the gap between true equality slowly but surely. There's still a long ways to go. But Britt Baker is doing things in this match that, and Thunder Rosa, by the way, who doesn't get enough credit for that match. It's really a shine out moment for Britt, but it's also a shine out moment for Thunder, but we'll leave that for another episode. We've seen thumbtacks. We've seen that iconic shot of Britt Baker finding the camera, which she learnt when she was injured and doing the waiting room and doing all these other things, and the blood pouring down Britt Baker's face, and that image is going to last a lifetime in AEW and in wrestling history, and to be the first two women to main event an episode of Dynamite. In a pandemic, by the way, guys. This was not with a full crowd. Could you imagine that match with a full crowd? I'd like to see them two tango again, because I think they deserve an arena full of fans going crazy. But to see these spots and to see different things and to put that on national, worldwide television really is just insane. And it put even more pressure on the AEW women's division to keep delivering at that pace and at that level, because man, oh man, did they set the bar with that match. A truly, truly incredible match. It won Match of the Year in Pro Wrestling Illustrated for a reason, and it truly is a landmark moment in AEW's history and the history and legacy of Britt Baker. Now, at Double or Nothing 2021, Britt Baker was able to capture the AEW Women's World Championship from Hikaru Shida for the very first time. And at time of recording, she's still the AEW Women's World Champion. I would assume, if I was a betting man, that Britt Baker will probably hold on to this title for a little while longer. There is a level and there is a tier in the AEW women's division and AEW in general, and Britt Baker is in that top tier category for a reason. She had some matches with Anna Jay, Ty Conti, Riho. She's had obviously some matches with Nyla Rose and Hikaru Shida. I think we're all building and we're all ready for her and Thunder Rosa to get back into it. She's worked with Chris Statlander and a bunch of other women in this time, but Britt Baker is kind of stomping her way and really putting her name down as the best in AEW. I think there's an argument for her being the very best in AEW. She's excelling at every single opportunity that she gets. She's a pillar of that company for a reason, and she's doing just wonderful, wonderful things for herself, for the AEW women's division, and AEW as a whole. That's going to do us for this episode of The Legacy of. I hope you are enjoying the return. I've been waiting a long time to get back to The Legacy of, and I'm so glad that we're back doing this again, guys. I really, really am. As I said earlier in the video, make sure to like, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff. Click the bell so you're getting notifications of when Love Wrestling is dropping new videos. Like I said, all of the links to my stuff and Love Wrestling stuff will be in the description box below. Next week on The Legacy of, we're taking a little bit of a left turn. We're talking about the Divas Championship. and the legacy that that has in professional wrestling or WWE history, whatever you want to say. So that will be a little bit different than Dr. Britt Baker, D.M.D. But for all your opinions, your comments, all of that kind of good stuff, go to the comment section below. Let me know what you think about Britt Baker and her time in AEW. Let me know what other people you would like me to cover here on the Legacy of. You can, of course, get at me on Twitter at @JoshRobinson_00, as well as Love Wrestling at LoveWrestlingCA on Twitter. Talk to us about wrestling. We will respond when we can. But until next Monday, guys, my name is Josh Robinson. I'm signing off for Love Wrestling, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.